Dr. Jane, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you for the second time. And our first podcast, how long ago was that? I was trying to figure out, I couldn't.
Yeah, that was May 2020.
Oh, wow.
5 years ago now.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What has been changed for you since the last conversation we had?
Well, 5 years older, Vanderson. I don't think I've seen you in 5 years.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen you.
How
Yeah,
have you
yeah.
been?
But I'm pretty good, pretty good. Now I have to wear glasses. My
Oh,
vision's
so do
not.
I. Yeah.
But yeah, but everything's is going good. And again, our podcast, the first one, What's a Good Life, is still one of my favorite episodes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so much knowledge, so much wisdom there. And I'm pretty sure we're gonna repeat this again. So please, what we're gonna talk today?
I thought we would do a part two, really, and talk about wisdom because it is a really interesting topic. Funny that our society doesn't really talk about it a lot. It's not a concept that is in popular media. So thank you for this opportunity to talk about the concept of wisdom.
Yeah, yeah. Why do you think is that?
Yeah. Why do I think that society doesn't? I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe because of our emphasis in modern society on fast-paced consumerism. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a topic that many people even think about. So I think it's really important having this conversation today. So thank you. Thank you for
No,
having me.
thank you. Okay, so let's make the first question then. Also, what's its wisdom?
Yeah. I'll just do a few disclaimers. I want to
Please.
say that for your listeners, I am a clinician. I'm not an academic. I'm not an expert in the concept of wisdom or the theoretical musings behind it. I don't have any formal training or degrees in philosophy. I do have a master's in bioethics, so I have given the concept of wisdom some thought, but I come to wisdom from a very practical point of view. I am a clinical psychologist, and throughout my career, I have had the opportunity to observe a whole range of people in extraordinary circumstances. And some of those people have been through terrible circumstances and approached it with the most amazing wisdom. And others have caused unspeakable harm to themselves or other people. So I'm interested in how can some people approach life in a wise way and others are still very early in their journey with wisdom. I just wanted to make those disclaimers first. I believe that wisdom is the greatest good and that developing wisdom and being able to access our wise mind is the most important goal for all humans. So, yeah, I am a fan of wisdom, but not an expert. Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
But your question is, what is wisdom?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a wonderful place to start, and I think that we should always define what we're going to talk about before we launch it. As I'm sure you can imagine that lots of ancient and modern thinkers have considered what is wisdom. I think the best place to start is a simple definition, and we'll unpack it, I'm sure. I think it'll be good to divide the podcast really into two halves. The first, thinking about what is wisdom, and the second half, how do we get it?
Yeah.
How do we develop wisdom? So would that be all right with you?
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
please. Yeah, no, sounds really good.
Good. Okay, so let's think about what is wisdom to start off with. I think a simple definition for us first. So simply, wisdom can be defined as the knowledge or judgment of what is the right thing to do in a particular circumstance, particularly complex life situations. So let's just unpack that a little bit. So the first part, judging or knowing, indicates that there's a predictive element to wisdom. So that someone who's been through various life experiences has the capacity to predict what the consequences might be for various courses of action. I don't believe that wisdom is a crystal ball, but certainly someone who has developed wisdom knows what the options are in particular circumstances and is able to judge what is the right one. Wisdom is very situation specific. So I think that someone might give some wise advice about focus in on the here and now, and that might be really good for one particular situation. It might be terrible advice for another. What is the right thing to do? The do part of the definition suggests that wisdom is activated or relevant when there's some decision to make about what you need to do. The knowing what the right thing to do part of the definition suggests that someone who has developed wisdom has also developed a moral and ethical code to draw on when they're faced with particular situations or are giving advice to people in particular situations. Wisdom is very different, but although it does overlap to general IQ and general knowledge, I think that if we define IQ as the capacity to learn and solve problems, then you could be very good at solving maths problems, but not be very wise in solving problems in the general life sphere. So I think it probably helps in developing wisdom if you have a decent IQ, but it's not sufficient. So they can be quite different, having a high IQ and being developed in wisdom.
That's awesome.
I think, just before we move on,
Yeah.
I'd also like to talk about the concept in psychology of the wise mind. I don't know if you know the psychological model called the 3 parts of self. Have you ever heard of that?
No,
No.
please. Yeah. Talk more about it.
Like any good psychologist, I have a copy of it.
Yeah.
Here, we might link it to your show notes if that's okay.
Yes, please, for
I'm
sure.
aware
Yeah.
that some people might be watching, other people might be listening. So this is basically the 3 parts of self. So it's a Venn
Right.
diagram. And so on the left, so a Venn diagram is obviously 2 overarching circles, overlapping circles. So on the left part of the Venn diagram is what we refer to as the emotional mind.
Emotional mind.
And this is a mind or a decision-making capacity which is dominated by strong emotion. On the right side of the Venn diagram, the right side of the circle, is the rational mind.
Rational mind.
And that is a mind state or a decision-making capacity dominated by logic. And then there's the bit in the middle, the overlapping part of the circle, which is the wise mind. And that suggests that we need to have recourse to both emotion and logic when being wise. It also suggests that perhaps making decisions only in an emotional mind or only in a rational mind is absent of wisdom.
That's interesting. Yeah, because seeing that automatically you think, wow, I should be more rational than emotional.
No, what do you think would happen if you were just rational and logical?
Yeah, good question.
That might be quite psychopathic because there'll be an absence of considering both your own emotional state and the emotional state of others.
Or the others, yeah, for sure.
I think that's the first thing about wisdom, is that it is a combination of both reason and emotion, but not too much of either side, and that there's a balanced position. Always in psychology, there's a balanced position. That's the healthy position.
So those are the ingredients of wisdom, you could say.
They are some. The ingredient is the balance, but we'll talk about some more ingredients because I think it's another really great way to flesh out the definition of what is wisdom. But just for your listeners to understand that the concept of wisdom might be defined also as a skill, a developing skill that can increase with age, but there's also, we all have access to a wise mind, a portal, if you like, through which we can access our developing wisdom. It will probably become a little bit more clear as we go along as well.
Yeah.
But just wanted to highlight that wisdom and the wise mind, similar concepts, but slightly different. Yeah,
With the intention of finding this balance between rational and emotional.
that's right. Yeah.
How can we do that?
We'll come to that.
Yeah.
Because I think that everyone wants to be wise.
Yeah, 100%. I hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that does go to our first point of why do we not talk about wisdom? Why is it not something that we revere or want to work on. Why are there not wisdom gyms, for example? Lots of other
Yes.
activities that we spend a lot of time going after, but we don't really go after wisdom
Yeah.
consciously very often. So let's talk about the ingredients of wisdom. I think that there'll be many ingredients to wisdom, but let's just focus on 5 important ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most important ingredients of wisdom is the capacity to look into the abyss. And by that, I mean being able to look at the not so pleasant parts of life. Because wisdom is hard won. You don't get to develop wisdom by sitting on the sidelines of life
Ah, wow.
or just reading a book. Wisdom is the ultimate lived experience.
Mhm.
Nietzsche, that's his famous quote, isn't it? And I've written it down here somewhere. His quote was, "Beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. For when you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you."
Oh, give me goosebumps. Yes. Yeah.
We do need to be able to look into the abyss, but not so long that we're overwhelmed or that the abyss gazes back into us.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't just look at the nice parts of life. We can't be so sensitive that we'll only go, I'm just going to look at puppies and pick roses and look at cat videos on YouTube. We also have to be able to look momentarily at least into the parts of life that are not so great. That way, I think wisdom is the opposite to innocence. If we define innocence as unacquainted with evil or having minimal life experience. So children are innocent because they do have minimal life experience and hopefully they are protected against many sources of evil. But children are often very early on in their journey of developing wisdom. It's just a nice way of saying wise.
Yeah.
So I think one of the ingredients of developing wisdom is that capacity to look into the abyss and extract the lessons from the not so great parts of life, because that is the silver lining of not so good parts of life, is that you can learn about what life is about and how best to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some research that going through negative life events is positively correlated with wisdom. There is a upper low where the person has had so many negative life events that it overwhelms them. So we don't want too many or too many at once, but certainly wisdom is hard won, and those negative life events that we do go through do teach us a lot. So I think that is a really important first ingredient of wisdom.
Mhm. So, what are the opposite now? What are the things who gets us away from achieve wisdom?
Luckily, there's 4 other ingredients first that I'll talk to you about,
Okay,
and then we'll
cool.
come to barriers.
Okay,
But I
sounds
think
good.
there are lots of other ingredients of wisdom that are really as equally as important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the second one to talk about of the 5 that we will is the capacity to observe, reflect, and learn. So normally we associate age with wisdom. You were talking about the old man beard.
Yeah,
And
that's
sometimes
such a society construction, of course.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Has to be a man, has to be old.
I think there's also in literature also the concept of the wise old woman as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so the reason I think that we associate age with wisdom is that people who are older just have sheer more volume of lived experience, don't they? And time to have extracted lessons from that lived experience. But I think age alone is insufficient for wisdom, because you could be 80 or very old and not have reflected or be closed-minded and not be an observer of life. So I think it is possible to get to older age and not be wise, although I think most people who get to 80 have done some reflection and be wiser for it. But I do think we need to think about this ingredient of being able to observe, reflect, and learn as a really critical ingredient for wisdom. age alone is not going to be there.
Mhm.
It's going to give you the volume of lived experience. So have to reflect on what have I learned from going through this. And I think most people do that, but some don't. And so they will come into older age without the massive benefit of aging, which is developing wisdom.
Mm-hmm. To self-reflection.
And I don't know about you, but I have met some younger people who are incredibly observant and reflective and are wise for it. I don't know if you know any.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I don't think age alone is the sufficient ingredient for wisdom. I think some younger people can be. Although when I think about a lot of the younger people they are very much in a steep learning trajectory of developing wisdom.
And the opposite as well, seeing elderly people not that wise, still repeating the same mistakes. Yeah, so
Yeah,
the same rule applied to the other side as well.
that's right. So age can be a mechanism to wisdom, but not age by itself.
Mm.
I think that leads to the third ingredient,
Yeah.
important, which for wisdom, which is the ability to tolerate ambiguity and regulate your emotions.
Mhm.
So wisdom isn't usually developed in smooth waters, and wisdom isn't needed in smooth waters. You know, if everything's going swimmingly, carry on.
Yeah.
Wisdom is needed when there are tough circumstances. And those circumstances might be terribly confusing. And the right answer may not be obvious at all. And in those difficult circumstances, you need to access your wise mind. You need to be able to regulate your emotions and be calm so that you can think well and think critically. And when people are too emotional, they're not thinking well at that point. The brain is flooded by strong emotion,
Yeah.
and it does impair their thinking mechanisms. So being able to regulate your emotions is very critical of developing wisdom and accessing that wise part. We do tend to associate wisdom with serenity and calmness, I think for good reason. I think it's also necessary to highlight that under certain circumstances, people come into enormous stress, and it would be impossible for them to access their wise mind. And they might be faced with a terrible situation where the options in front of them are just terrible. And in those circumstances, the literature refers to those as hard cases. And in those times, I think one of the ingredients of wisdom is being able to go, I can't access my wise mind, and I might need to push pause on the decision if I'm able to, or even defer to others. So there's a very famous case in the literature about a hard case which was about conjoined twins, referred to as the Mary and Jody case. Have you heard of that?
No.
I'll tell you briefly about
Yeah,
it,
please.
because I think it highlights it.
Mhm.
Mary and Jody were conjoined twins, born in 2000. And they were conjoined at the pelvis, and unfortunately the doctors told their parents that if they remained conjoined, they both would die before their first birthday. But that if they separated them, Jody would live, but Mary would definitely die. Now imagine being faced with that as a parent.
Wow.
Those two options just do not seem good options.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents, who were devout Catholics, couldn't make the decision, understandably. And so they asked the courts and medicine. And the first level of court couldn't make the decision. It was just that hard. The two options were just too difficult to actually come to a decision. So it went to the Court of Appeal, and 5 senior judges came together to make the decision. So think of that, all that wisdom coming together to make that decision. And what a decision to have to make. But they did make the decision to separate them. and the separation occurred, and Mary died. And Jodie still lives today. She'll be about 25. My understanding, and I don't know if this is right or not, is that she's starting to be adopted.
Oh, wow.
But the point is that sometimes we are faced with terrible circumstances, and it's no shame to say, I can't make this decision, or I'm going to have to consult with someone else and get assistance to make that decision.
What a beautiful example. Wow.
It's a striking
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the absolute definition of a hard decision. I think the fourth ingredient of wisdom is humility. If we define humility as believing that you're not more special or knowledgeable than the next person, then I think that it's really important that when you're developing wisdom, that you recognize that we all have blind spots. And having the humility to say, I don't know, rather than a I know it all attitude. And that it's okay to say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think people who are early on in their journey to developing wisdom think, I have to know it all, or I do know it. I think that's a real mistake, because it's impossible to know everything in all of the complex life situations that you will be faced with. And I think it was Socrates that said, all I know is that I
Yeah.
And I think that a really important part of humility, ingredient of wisdom, is thinking, maybe I don't know all I need to know in this decision. And again, consulting with wise mentors. Everyone needs a wise mentor or two. Even if you're a wise mentor for someone else, you need your own wise mentor. I don't think it's impossible to ever arrive at a destination of, I've got complete wisdom. Aha, I've made it.
Yeah.
I think we, as fallible humans, are on a journey of developing wisdom, and we'll never get to a destination. There's no more. Yeah. Humility is something that may not also be talked about in modern day.
No.
I don't know. Why do you think that is?
Good question. I don't know. I think maybe for some people it strikes as some form of weakness.
Yes.
Yeah. What's the opposite?
Because I think also another ingredient of wisdom is curiosity, and that you don't need to, but that you can be curious about.
So that's number 4.
Yeah. I don't think that it's
Humility.
necessary to, and I think it's impossible to experience everything in life as well. You need to be able to listen to other people's experiences and learn from that, and be curious about their life stories. We can't be closed-minded. We always can learn something. And that is, as I said, it's impossible to go through every life experience. And luckily, sometimes we can learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember who said that, but yeah, life is too short to learn through your own mistakes. Learn from other people's mistakes. It's way easier.
Yeah, it is easier. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to make your own mistakes. We're all fallible. And the fifth ingredient is one that is absolutely necessary, which is empathy. You could have the most amazing capacity to solve problems. If you don't have empathy, then it's not wisdom. So if we define empathy as the ability to see something from another person's perspective and take into account their needs and not just your own, I don't think selfishness and wisdom ever go together. So that empathy is a very important ingredient of wisdom. And not just considering your present self, but also considering your future self as well. I do love the concept in psychology of that we're a community of selves in yourself, that you have your present self, and that you have a community of past selves and a community of future selves that you're responsible for. If we think about community as a caring for and a responsibility for, that you have responsibility for the future Vanderson. And that's...
that's so awesome. Please
Yeah.
tell more. That's
well,
super
it's just the concept in psychology. I can't remember who first came up with it, but that you are an integrated self. that you have a fairly stable personality over time, but that because we're learning all the time, we are evolving into future selves and evolving from past selves. And we need to be compassionate to past selves who wouldn't have the knowledge and wisdom that we presently do.
Mhm.
And so we do need to have compassion to past selves. We also need to protect and have consideration of our future selves so that the actions that we do now don't negatively impact our future selves too much as well. And that's just a nice way of conceptualizing the self. I
That's
think, as
beautiful.
well.
Mm. Yeah, I love this idea of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, because I think that's one thing that we are starting to become better at in modern society is the idea of community. And living in a large urban environment is probably not ideal for humans. I think it was Erich Fromm that said that humans flourish best in communities of around about 300. And certainly the smaller the place that you live in, the more friendlier and care that your fellow villagers or townspeople will pay you. Whereas in a large city, people could walk past you and not give anything. If you were lying on the ground bleeding, when I lived in a city I won't name overseas,
Hmm.
I'd come from a small town, and I remember coming into this large city, and I'd never really seen people who were dependent on heroin before, and there were people literally passed out on the streets, and people in this large city were literally just walking over them.
Mm.
And that shocked me hugely, coming from a small town where that wouldn't have happened.
Mhm.
And I do think Erich Fromm is correct in that we flourish better as humans when we're in a smaller community. Yeah. And so I think there's more rhetoric now about communities and who is
Yeah.
your community, and that the ingredient of the community is that you care for one another.
Hmm.
And so circling back to this point is that if we view ourselves as a community of selves, then maybe we'll be more caring towards our past selves who weren't as wise as we are, purely because they didn't have the life experience that we today do, and having care towards our future self and making sure that what we do today doesn't harm way.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely gonna refer more to
Yeah.
community. Yeah, that's awesome. That's super cool. So please can we review all the fives
Yeah.
them? So what's the first one?
So the first one is the capacity to look into the abyss.
Cool.
Not too long, but definitely the
Yes.
capacity, the
Mhm.
courage. Yeah. The second one is the capacity to observe and reflect and learn.
Mhm.
I'm reminded of owls. I'm a big fan of owls.
Yeah.
What,
Yes. Yeah.
why do we think owls
It's a wise
are
thing.
wise?
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to Greek mythology, but I think that also, if you think of an owl, they are silent observers.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
For sure.
they're not all that.
Yeah.
You see an owl and you think, gosh, how long has that been there for? And they're just silently observing. And yeah, so that is the second ingredient, is that you have the capacity to observe, reflect, and learn.
Mhm.
The third ingredient is being able to regulate your emotions so that you can access that wise part of yourself, because strong emotion will impair your capacity for good thinking.
Mhm.
The fourth,
So just on this note, what's one technique do you recommend for someone who have strong emotions to regulate that? What's your advice? What's your suggestion?
luckily, there's many ways to regulate your emotion. I think
Mm-hmm.
that listeners need to find out what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
But some guidance would be that it's very hard to remain in strong emotion over time. That time alone heals all wounds. There's many proverbs about time lessening strong emotion, and it's absolutely true. I remember when I went overseas for the first time, big plane. I'd never been in a big plane before. It was massive. And I was sitting one over from a young girl, probably my age. I, at that time, was excited about being on a plane. When we took off, she had a full-on massive panic attack. So a panic attack is when the mind is absolutely dominated by fear. And we were going up in a very steep way, and the plane, everyone was belted in and no one really could help her. But by the time the plane had leveled out, her panic had subsided just with time alone. So time alone is going to soothe strong emotion, but definitely there are ways to speed it up as well. Nostril breathing is my favorite way of calming myself. And whenever I'm taking a big nostril breath, I feel that instant soothing, that instant kicking in of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what you want to learn. How does my body calm itself? What is my favorite way to do it? What is the most effective way for me? It is different for different people. Some people find some mantras or some self-talk that helps them calm themselves down. But I think the more ways you can do it, maybe the better. But it is learning. When I'm cognizant that I'm struggling with strong emotion, how do I best calm myself down? How do you do it?
Good question. Yeah, because definitely breathing it's the number one. Because if you even the awareness of that, because if you're not aware,
Yes.
but again, the time alone to go for a walk,
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to have this time alone and regulate the breathing. Physical activity for sure, it's important. Even here, for example, I had some case when someone was dealing with a panic attack,
Yeah.
and I, straight away, let's run around the mat. So take a deep breath, take the person from the mind to more awareness to the body to notice what's going on. So yeah, meditation, of course it is, but meditation, I think it's more, it's the preparation for that. It's preparation
Good point.
for the moment.
I think that strategy depends on how much time you have to regulate yourself. Sometimes you're going to have to regulate yourself very quickly and in the moment.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Know which situation. Yeah.
That's right. And so you don't have the luxury of 30 minutes to sit down and meditate. So that's when, for me, nostril breathing is that most instantaneous way of regulating the emotion. It says to me, you've got enough time to nothing says to the body you're in a panic mode than not breathing or not breathing well. So if you've got the time to, if your body recognizes you're taking a nostril breath, a big deep breath, then it's saying, oh yes, okay, I'm not in that panic mode anymore. There is sufficient time for sufficient breath.
Yeah.
Yeah. And grounding is often a nice way to bring yourself from that emotional mind, which is often predicting catastrophe, back down to the here and now as, oh, I can feel my feet on the ground. I'm here. I'm not in that catastrophe yet. What can I do? One of my favorite sayings too is always, you can always make a situation worse. So
Yeah.
what can I do now to not make, if I'm in a bad situation, I can always make it worse. So what can I do to not make the situation worse?
Yeah.
And then just recapping, the fourth ingredient is humility and the fifth is empathy. So if you can think about all of those 5 ingredients, I think, and practice each of them, you're on a really good way to developing wisdom. I like to think of wisdom as a practice of wisdom, not that you've reached some threshold of becoming wise, but that
A black belt in wisdom. There's no such a thing in there.
yeah, but that you are practicing wisdom and that you are developing that just as you would jiu-jitsu as well. You have a jiu-jitsu practice rather than getting to a point where that's it. Yeah. I do think that particularly in our modern world, there are a lot of barriers to wisdom. And again, I've just chosen 5 to concentrate on, but they might encapsulate quite a few of the barriers to wisdom. The first one is just a frenetic, modern, fast-paced life, particularly in urban environments. And if we are wanting to be those reflective, learning creatures, then a fast pace of life is not conducive to that. We have fast food, fast fashion, fast culture in general, and that sort of leads to fast thinking. And there's a culture of people wanting snappy decisions or wanting people to tell them the answer, and an impatience of good deliberation that's often needed for wisdom. And so I think that just our general pace of life is a real barrier to the development of wisdom. And that hyper-consumerism as well, because it then leads to a focus on the ego and the self, and really doesn't lend itself to reflecting on what is good for me and my community. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
The attention span as well, right? Because that conditions us to not pay much attention, in the lack of being present to
Quiet time.
the quiet time.
I wonder if it's a byproduct of the internet as well, is that we've become, particularly in this last generation, we've become used to snappy answers or instant answers, and that there's no space now for boredom because the internet will always entertain you. And of course there are good things about the internet.
Of course, yeah.
But one of the byproducts or the not so good things about it is this no space for quietness, and that quietness is maybe associated with boredom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember as a child, I don't know if you remember as a child, being bored because there was no internet and no YouTube, and my parents wouldn't let me watch TV all day, which was a good thing. And through that boredom comes the capacity for reflection and creativity. And so I worry about the generation that's being raised with only ever knowing the internet and that fast pace that comes with it.
Yeah, but interesting, even though, as on the beginning of the podcast, as you were talking, and you said something very interesting. Okay, tell me the answer already. And I noticed with this necessity, oh no, give me right now, please, now, I need now. And I think that's, takes away the possibility of reach the five steps. In one, it's listen, pay attention, be calm, relax.
Maybe that's just curiosity on your part.
Yeah.
But certainly that fast pace is a barrier to the ingredients of wisdom.
So, is wisdom something static or dynamic? So I need to, it's set in stone or it's more flexible?
Yeah, I think that depending on our conceptualization of it, I think there is a static body of knowledge that you develop over time, a static ethical code, if you like, that you're drawing on. But I think the dynamic part of it is that wise mind that you can come in and out of. So you might have a good static body of ethical knowledge that you have learned, but if you're not in your wise mind, you're not able to access it. So wisdom is both static and dynamic. Yeah. I think, though, just going back to the barriers to wisdom, I think there's some other ones we can talk about as well. And one of them is the resistance to there only being two bad options to consider. That I think one of the features of maybe our modern culture is that we think that choice is unlimited, and often it's not. And when we are faced with a limited choice where both options aren't optimal, people can start to get really upset about that and start to say things like, this isn't fair, this is your fault. Actually, we have to get used to the fact that lots of really hard life situations involve two options that we have to choose from, and both which are not optimal.
That's such a good point.
And so I think resistance in general, where we're saying this shouldn't be happening, actually it is. And these are the two choices that you have. And yeah, unfortunately, there's not an ideal choice in that, but that's what life is about. It's not unfettered choice. I think another barrier to wisdom is also modernity's overemphasis on comfort, in that everything has to be comfortable, and they're not willing to do the discomfort of the act of thinking that sometimes wisdom takes, or the discomfort that can come with the right option. Have you read The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter?
No.
I really recommend that book.
Please tell me more.
Yeah, Michael Easter, I think, is a journalist, and he was observing how lots of problems are occurring in society because we're so used to being comfortable in the modern world. A lot of the sources of discomfort and effort have been taken away from us with advancing technology. And so he did a experiment on himself and went to the Arctic Circle, I believe, for a longer period of time, like a month or so. And I can imagine that being in the Arctic Circle in a tent. And I don't think he took much food. I think he really put himself in a very uncomfortable situation. And so he took a diary and just reflected on what it was like to be in such an uncomfortable situation, and why it's good for people to not always be uncomfortable, but to exercise that effort muscle, so that when it comes to a difficult life situation, you're not resistant to it, that you're able to go, I trust that I can get through this. I trust that I'm okay with being uncomfortable. I trust that I can make the effort to develop wisdom. Maybe that's one of the plagues of modern society as well, is that there seems to be a rhetoric that we should always be comfortable, and that it's wrong when we're putting people through something uncomfortable.
That's so interesting. In Jiu-Jitsu, we have this mantra. It's the ability to understand how to be comfortable in an uncomfortable position.
I think another barrier to wisdom is that we're largely divorced from nature, particularly in urban environments. And nature has so much to teach us about, one, being wise, and also it's a requisite for being calm as well. And so I think that being in nature is a ingredient to wisdom, with not being in nature or feeling divorced from nature being a barrier. It's really interesting to think about that Homo sapiens, the Latin word for humans, sapiens is Latin for wisdom. And that would suggest that we conceptualize of ourselves as the wise species.
That's so interesting.
But there's an inference in there that if we are the wise species, that other species aren't.
Yeah.
And I think that may not be completely correct, in that my view is that non-human species can be wise for their own species.
Yeah, that's one of the questions here. Yes,
Yeah.
please tell more.
Yeah, that there is some research to indicate that when hunters kill off all of the elder animals in a herd, that the younger ones that are left, are negatively impacted by that. Now that suggests that somehow the elder animals are passing on some wisdom to the younger animals, and that's wiped out when all of the older animals are culled or killed by hunters. So I think that we are not the only wise species, that we just don't have the language to understand how other species can be wise. I think we're starting to learn that trees and fungi have their systems of wisdom. But don't think it's not just trees and fungi. I think that all species will have their systems of wisdom. It's just that humans aren't able to yet understand or conceptualize that. So I think being divorced from nature and thinking that we are the only wise species is a barrier to our overall wisdom, not just for ourselves, but for the planet as well.
Yeah, that's also because one of the advice as well for to calm, it's go to nature. Yeah, it's such a powerful thing, but yeah, so true. So true. Wisdom, yeah, that's now become something. It's individual or collective.
I think it can be both.
Mm.
And I think that we need the individual first for collective wisdom to occur. Yeah. I think if we just maybe skip to the second part of the podcast where we ask, how do we develop wisdom? I think that
Yeah, that's the juice part. We get.
that's the part that maybe people might fast forward to.
Yeah.
if they're impatient. But how many generations of humans do you think there has been, Vanderson?
Good question. How many generations? I have no idea.
Have a guess.
Holy. Okay. How many generations? My goodness. I don't know. I'm gonna say something silly. Have no idea. Please tell me.
Someone else I asked that said 60. But it's
Sorry, 6,
60. It's not 60. It's 10, according to the internet. There's been about 10,000 generations of humans.
10,000.
If a generation is roughly 25 years or so.
Okay, interesting.
If we think about that, 10,000 generations is a lot of generations. And so we, today in 2025, have the benefit of all of those generations doing what we're doing, which is considering what is wisdom. And so in developing our own wisdom, we have the benefit of all of that ancient musings about what is the right way to live, what is the right thing to do in particular circumstances. We have the gift of so many amazing proverbs from ancient civilizations and past generations. We might think that we are our current generation or the current society is the most intelligent. But remember, we haven't defined wisdom as just intelligence, that we need to draw on collective and ancient effort at considering what is wisdom. And I'd like to share one of my favorite proverbs, which is an ancient Haitian proverb, which I think just is one of the most wisest things I've ever heard. And it's only 5 words, but so much wisdom is packed into these 5 words that it's just such a gift from collective thinking about wisdom and ancient sources of wisdom. So I think that's one of the first, I'll share it in a minute, but I think that's one of the first ways that we develop wisdom is by acknowledging what has come before us, and that these 10,000 generations of humans surely have done their own learnings about wisdom, and we get to share that. So the proverb from the ancient Haitian proverb is, beyond the mountain, more mountains. It's just such a beautiful, pithy statement of all that is wise in the world. Life, that's what life is. You go up one mountain, a challenge, and you get to the bottom, and that there's another mountain in front of you. And it comes back to that concept of resistance. That's often in my clinical practice, people would come in with a problem. They weren't mentally ill, but they would come in with a difficult life problem, and there would be resistance to the fact that they were going through a problem. And that beautiful proverb teaches us, from however many years ago that proverb was communicated, that this is what life's about. You go through one problem and there'll be other problems waiting for you. But the proverb is more beautiful than that, because going up a mountain is obviously a challenge, But you have the summit, which is a time of joy and awe. And then you get to have the easy part of going down the mountain. So that life is just not all challenge, but it is challenge after challenge, but not all bad. It has moments of beauty and ease as well. I just am absolutely in love with that proverb.
No, it's beautiful. And
And
the collection of all those moments, what's life is about it, huh?
yeah, exactly. But that life can't be problem free. And once you've gone through one tough problem, that's not it. There are more to come. And that is the normative way of life. And that proverb encapsulates that in 5 words. And in a really beautiful way, I'd love to have a painting of a mountain range and for that to be written underneath. It's such a pithy, beautiful way of wisdom. It's just 5 words of so much wisdom packed into those 5 words.
Conrad, or make that as
50th birthday
yeah.
present.
That's so awesome. Yeah, as you're saying that, yeah. I don't know, one comes to my mind. I like that one. Yeah, wisdom is when someone plants a tree, they know they're not gonna be able to. I don't know the right words, but
You
you're
know
not
the-
gonna be able
To
to
see.
see it. Yeah, to see it or to sit on the under the tree or something like that for
Yeah.
other generations as well. Yeah, I think that's quite
And
wide.
that is a beautiful proverb, and it speaks to the empathy ingredient of wisdom. That's not all about yourself. Yeah. But the decisions you make are for your future selves, but maybe future generations as well. That is going to be of no benefit to you. But that is part of being a human. A
Yeah.
wise human is that you're not just thinking of yourself. And maybe that's what we're starting to, and maybe that's the part of modern society that's starting to grate on us, that some of the powers that be are all about profit and considering only themselves, when actually, if we are a wise species, we would consider everyone in that species and other living things as well. So I think there are other ways to develop wisdom, which I'd love to share with you.
Yeah, please. Yeah, because how can what's the practical thing? How can you become wise?
I think the other ways to increase your wisdom or develop your wisdom is that you have to have a wise mentor as a person of education to you. And I'm wondering if you've had any wise mentors. I'm sure you're a wise mentor to others, but have you had a wise mentor yourself?
Yes, for sure, for sure. You're one of my wise mentor. We know that every time I speak with you, it's always learn something, and I truly mean that. Yeah, this podcast has been awesome in this sense because I've been learning for so many beautiful minds, and you are definitely one of them. Yeah,
And
but
you'll be wise mentor to many others as well. But I think it's a circle that we all have a wise mentor, and hopefully more than one wise mentor. And I think you're very fortunate if you have several wise mentors that you can go to because they are teaching you and you get to benefit from their lived experience and their wisdom. And it comes back to that humility of you can't know it all. And sometimes we go into these really difficult life circumstances where you are in that emotional state of mind and you need support at that stage. And so, yeah, find and listen to a range of wise mentors. They're probably going to be older than you, but maybe not always. If you're very lucky, your parents are your first wise mentors. And I'm very lucky that I have 2 parents who have been always wise mentors and still are wise mentors, and they are one of the first people that I will ring when I need some wisdom and some advice about something. When I know that I'm in that emotional state of mind and not thinking clearly, that's when you go to your wise mentors. And not only do you receive good advice, hopefully, but you also grow from that. And that in turn helps you to be a wise mentor to someone else.
yeah, and I think being part of a community as well, you're gonna have access to mentors.
Community of mentors, that's lovely. And another thing that you mentioned just triggered something that I would like to talk about is that when you're going through one of these difficult life experiences and you are in that emotional mind, your wise mentor isn't in that same situation. So they can have that beautiful, objective, slight detachment from it and give you some good advice because they are able to access their wise mind, whereas you're not able to at that point. Yeah. I think you're very lucky then to have that. It shows, doesn't it? Yeah. Maybe you'll be able to answer the next one a little bit more easily. I think that whilst I said at the start that you can't learn wisdom just from a book, I meant just exclusively from a book, but I do think that we are blessed in this age to have so many amazing texts.
Yes. Yeah.
And certainly I'm a big reader and I have learned a lot of wisdom from amazing books that I read and read again. And one of my favourite books is Woman Who Runs with the Wolves, a book of such amazing wisdom. I must have read it 20 times at least, underlined and highlighted parts that just, you read it and you think, my goodness, what an amazing lesson of life. What have you read books that have been amazingly wise for you?
Wow, holy. Yeah, the first one comes to the mind, different that quote of Nietzsche. Yeah, it's a big one. But I know we shared this book on the past. It's meant for searching for meaning.
Yeah.
Yet different that book, yes, it has something change on me after to see someone going through this horrible experience and trying to find the meaning. Viktor Frankl. Yeah.
The authors of these amazing books that people, love and reread all the time, they are fountains of wisdom that we can go back to. One of my favourite quotes from Women Who Run with the Wolves is such an amazing piece of wisdom. If necessary, show your incisors.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Why is that?
For someone who struggled with assertiveness, that spoke to me of, okay, if it's necessary. So the wisdom, a lot of these quotes, these pieces of wisdom are really short, but there's so much subtext behind them. And if you unpack it, you can see the depth of the wisdom behind the small amount of words. So if we unpack that quote, if necessary. So it's not always necessary. You don't need to go around with your fangs bared all the time. Only when necessary. But if it is necessary, then show your incisors. So wolves do that. They show their fangs as a way of saying, hey, you need to back off. So you don't need to be violent, or you don't need to be over the top aggressive to be assertive. You just need to show your incisors and say, back off.
Boundaries. huh?
Boundaries.
Yeah, yeah.
So if necessary, show your incisors. So much wisdom in that statement of it. And yeah, so books, wise mentors,
Books.
ancient collective wisdom, observation of nature. It's sometimes ironic that we refer to as the wise species. We're
Yeah, that was.
intelligent.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
create AI and space travel and all that kind of thing. There's no doubt that we're intelligent and can solve problems. But are we always wise? And
No.
when we're doing these things like AI, the development of AI, are we having the concurrent conversations about wisdom? Is this a wise thing to do? And how do we create our technologies with the conversation of wisdom
Wisdom.
with that? Or else we just create these technologies that may not keep up with ethics and may not ultimately be the wise technologies.
Because comfort, it's the first, right? Yeah.
It's a very good point. Yeah,
It's a
comfort.
dangerous.
Comfort above wisdom. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
it's
about
not
that.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is something that I would like to see is the development of technologies with the conversation, the wisdom or the ethics of the technology going side by side with the development of the technology. Yeah. Because I guess the
Yeah,
question
that's
is,
beautiful. Yeah.
can AI be wise? I don't think it is at the moment.
No.
Because it can't cope with nuance and ambiguity. And is it drawing on a set of ethical principles? I don't think it is. Yeah. Observation of nature was the point. I think that nature, when we observe nature, and I think one of the settling, calming things about nature is that nature is just focused on being. It's not attached to, as far as we can tell, not attached to an ego or thinking too far in the future. It's just concentrating on being. And Erich Fromm talks about how humans often fall into an orientation of having rather than an orientation of being. And by that he meant that modern humans, and he was writing this from the 1950s onwards, and he was writing in America, so he was seeing this hyper consumerism and this focus on profit above people. And so he wrote several books about this. One of them is called To Have or To Be. It's an amazing book. And another one that he wrote on the topic was The Art of Being. And so he talked about the dangers of humans having this orientation of having, of consuming, and orienting their lives to owning and having and consuming more, and conceptualize everything as having it, grabbing it, hoarding it. Even wisdom, he said, people can, if they're coming from it from an orientation of having, then it's not wisdom. That the right way for humans to be is like nature, like the orientation of being, which is being your best self, which we'll come to in a minute, but also the practice of productivity and productive activity and reason and wisdom alongside of that. And so I really appreciate that kind of discourse, is that we're going too far down that consumerism, having kind of orientation, that we need to observe nature more, because whilst we label ourselves the wise species, maybe that's not quite correct. Yeah, we have the capacity for wisdom, but maybe we don't always exercise it.
Yeah.
Erich Fromm called it purposeful activity. What else are you going to do with your time except fall into just pleasure and consumerism? So yeah, having a purpose gives you a good orientation. Yeah.
What else?
I think we've touched on this, but practicing serenity and balance so we can access the wisdom that we're accumulating. There's no point accumulating the wisdom without being able to access it. And if we're always in our emotional mind, then we don't have the capacity to access that wisdom. So finding ways to increase your likelihood of being calm and serene when you're under pressure. This is when I wanted to talk about people. There's that phrase that's been around for a while now, being your best self. What does that mean? Because I think there might be some danger in people conceptualizing their best self as having things like having a great career, having a great Instagram looking life, or having things and it being ego driven in terms of being my best self. I've heard people say, I'm not living my best life because they don't have the job they want or the life they want, or life's not looking like other people would be envious of it. I think that's the wrong way to go. I think being your best self is when you are able to practice wisdom.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome.
That may not be a very popular view these days,
No.
because now I'm going to harp back onto something I harped on about in the first podcast, but I think social media does promote a exterior view of our lives. How is our life looking to other people? And that is an ego conceptualization of our life. I don't think that's a very wise way to live life. It's trapping yourself into always wondering and worrying about what other people are thinking about your life. That's not your best life.
Yeah.
But I do see that a lot in the social media sphere. So I think if we can promote more that being your best self is when you can learn and be on your journey of learning wisdom, and that you're able to access your pool of wisdom on a more frequent basis and know when you can't, and being able to seek wisdom from your wise mentors, that's when you're living your best life and being your best self. That would be my hope for this podcast, is that the people that are listening can reconceptualize what it is to lead their best life and be their best self, and that this podcast goes some way in promoting the good of wisdom. I think maybe one of the last things I have to say about wisdom is hopefully a message of hope, in that if you self-assess that you're not wise or that your pool of wisdom is small, it is a journey. It is a journey of developing that pool of wisdom, and it is a journey of learning to be able to access your
To
wise
learn,
mind.
yeah.
That, coming back to your original point of the wise man, old man with the beard, we don't have to wait until we look like that, or we don't have to wait until you're in your 8th or 9th decade of life to be on your journey of wisdom. You're on it now. And it's okay if you're thinking that your pool is small. There are things that you can do, things that we've talked about today, that you're on a journey of developing your wisdom. And if you're self-assessing that you don't have a great big pool of wisdom, maybe you've got more wisdom than you give yourself credit for, because at least then you have the humility ingredient of wisdom. And you can every day learn, as long as you are reflecting. And that's where that fast pace of life is so problematic, I think, is that we need to, if we're going to practice wisdom, we have to practice reflection. We have to give ourselves time every day to be reflecting on, what have I seen today? What have I observed? What does that tell me about the right way to live? And how can I include that in my pool of things that I'm going to draw on next time a really complex life problem? So I think it's important, particularly for psychologists, but for all humans, to impart hope in that. That is one of the most important things that we can do for each other, is give each other hope. And whenever someone says something that's really down on themselves, I don't think it's disingenuous to point out the kernel of hope that's there for the person, as a kind of invitation for that person to go, okay, it's not all bad. Even if you're at rock bottom, you can always make it worse. So that means there's hope for making it better. So there's always hope.
Oh, that's such a good point. That's awesome. Dr. Jen, then any question I should ask you and I missed the point?
I don't think so. I think we've talked about wisdom as a concept and the wise mind. I hope people understand that. That we have the pool of wisdom, we have the wise mind that brings us in and out of a state of mind that can access our pool of wisdom. We've talked about the necessity to consider emotion, but that too much emotion is impairing for wisdom. So we haven't talked that much about the right side of the rational mind, that we do need to consider logic in our wisdom, but too much logic or too much rationality is also impairing for a good decision, but that we need the empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah. And we've talked about the barriers to wisdom, and then we've talked about some ways for people to kickstart their journey into developing wisdom. And I hope the message is clear that we are not the only wise species, and we're not, just because we have a lot of knowledge and intellect in this modern world, doesn't mean that the generations before us weren't also on their journey of learning wisdom, and that we have so much to learn. And that's part of that humility as well, is that this modern age is not the be all and end all. Yes, we have accomplished amazing advances in technology, which is amazing. We should celebrate that, but we also have to celebrate the wisdom that's come before us and access that and remember it whilst we're going through a very rapid advancement in technology coming up. We have to have those concurrent conversations of ethics and wisdom alongside intellectual advancement.
And wisdom, it's not only related to age. Yeah.
No,
That's
it is going to give you the volume of experiences that important and an advantage, but it's not the sufficient ingredient for wisdom.
that's awesome. Dr. Jen, thank you so much again. And we need to think about the next podcast. What's going to be the next topic? But that's a
In 5 years' time?
Yeah, no, less this time. 5 years too long. Thank you so much. I really appreciate again
you
your
for
time. Yeah, it was awesome. I learned so much, and yeah, I'm pretty sure people who's gonna listen and is gonna watch that is gonna become more wise for sure.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was lovely to see you again.
No, thank you.